So I think one of the key things for me is when you're thinking about this conflict, the core of the Islamic Republic, the core of that regime, they're very comfortable with a conflict that is existential. That's what they've been preparing for. They're very comfortable with that idea. They're very comfortable with the idea of a conflict to the death. I don't think fundamentally that the United States is. I think Israel probably is on many levels. I don't think the United States really has any interest. Certainly, most of the public doesn't. The last poll I saw, I think 27% approved of the conflict.
Yeah, it was low.
Um, it's very low, and I think the level of commitment, certainly that the Iranian regime is willing to put into this, outstrips anything that we're going to be capable of over a long period of time. And I think it's increasingly clear this is not going to be a couple of days. This is going to be something that drags on and has a lot of consequences that I don't think the United States is prepared to deal with.
Well, I think as well on those same lines, you look at the end of the Cold War,
Hmm.
1991, and the
Hmm.
US was the lone superpower. During the Cold War, it was an existential threat for the United States, and the US was an existential threat for the Soviet Union. We saw each other in that light. Once that's over, I think Americans have become complacent and we've gone, there's no more existential threat to our country. We have these smaller threats. We have terrorist groups that are out there and they're threatening the
Hmm.
U.S., but they're not threatening the existence of America, or they don't have the capabilities to threaten the full existence of America because they don't have nuclear weapons. And I think the U.S. and seeing Iran, we thought Iran was an existential threat to the United States if they were able to have a nuclear weapon, because Iran sees the U.S. as being an existential threat to them. And I think Trump is saying we need to jump on this right now because this is our last chance to knock these guys out before they can build a nuclear weapon.
Yeah, but I fundamentally disagree with that for a lot of reasons. And I think one of them is there was a lot of very similar conversation around, well, I mean, there are two reasons. So first of all, you look at North Korea.
Hmm.
North Korea has nuclear weapons. They definitely see us as an existential threat. They've had nuclear weapons for a while now. And I'm not going to say I feel comfortable with them having nuclear weapons because I don't. But the idea that that made them more feckless, I'm not necessarily sure. I don't think their behavior before they got nuclear weapons was any less crazy than it has been after. That would actually be an interesting study.
Yeah.
Um,
I would think it's North Korea has been somewhat more rational because
I
they
think
have a
it's kind of
nuclear
been forced
weapon.
to be.
Now
Yeah.
they're at the same table as the US, as the UK, as France, as China, as Russia, India, Pakistan.
I mean, and a lot, not incorrectly, is made of the sort of ideology behind the Iranian regime. It's not any wackier than what's going on with North Korea, I'll tell you that. Um, so that's one. Two, for me, there's been a very odd framing of we have to act now when every indication has been made that they were seriously negotiating. And this more has to do with the Israelis' perception of an existential threat to them than it really has to do with an existential threat to America. It's also worth noting, and we'll talk about this in 5 seconds,
Hmm.
they've effectively used American involvement to widen the theater of this conflict immensely in a way that I don't think they would have been able to do if it was just Israel. So, because we're involved, The rationale is now they can target anything affiliated with a U.S. base. Well, there are 26 U.S. military bases in countries directly around Iran. And I don't think it's surprising that they feel somewhat threatened by that, particularly after last summer. I mean, we went in and we bombed the hell out of them for 12 days. And there was no indication that we weren't going to do that again. I mean, it even comes down, it boils down to something like simple planning. When we killed, or we in Israel, the US and Israel killed Khamenei and half of the cabinet, that was not surprising to anyone in Iran. They'd been planning for it. Why had they been planning for it? Because between the US and Israel, these are two countries that's been trying to take out the leadership basically since the 80s. I mean, since 79, we have had a death wish for this regime, and specifically the Ayatollah.
Yeah.
Israel, too, really since the 80s, it's been baked in. And yeah, the rhetoric coming from Iran and a lot of the groups they've allied themselves with and created in some cases, there's some reasoning behind that. It's not without any logic. But I think the idea that their behavior in the lead up to this was irrational just doesn't bear out by the fact that we did go in and basically try to take out the entire government in one swoop and got very close to it, by the way. And I want to be really clear before we move on.
Well, I want to
I
jump in
don't
here too, real quick, after you're
I
done.
don't like the Islamic Republic of Iran. That government is deeply horrific in ways that are still coming to light and have been for a very long time. I'm just saying I disagree with the idea that it was a do or die kind of moment. I just don't see that.
Well, to kind of go back to that point of both countries seeing each other as an existential threat. So
Hmm.
on Thursday, this is something I saw from NBC when Steve Witkoff and the Iranian foreign minister were negotiating in Geneva. Iran said that they, quote, had an inalienable right to enrich uranium, and the U.S., quote, had an inalienable right to stop Iran from doing that. And for Iran, their nuclear program is key to their country's existence.
Yeah.
They've seen that as the cornerstone of their foreign policy with a lot of the EU and with the US under Obama. And Trump has said from the beginning, Iran is not allowed to have nuclear power. They're not allowed to have nuclear weapons. The Iran nuclear program is gone. And both countries essentially were running at each other full speed, and neither is willing to get off on the exit ramp. So you've got a huge collision here. And I think the speed at which the U.S. hit Iran, the U.S. saw this collision was going to happen, and the U.S. just stepped on the gas.
Yeah, I think it's an avoidable conflict that's just not going to end well for anyone.
No,
And
I think too. This could have been if one country would have turned a little bit to the right and
yeah,
they would have avoided each other. You could have prevented this.
and I'm going to be explicit. I think it was us, but that's my position on this. I will say, I think the Iranian response was, again, it's logical, but it was maybe not expected. What they've essentially done is they've turned the entire Gulf into a theater of operations. And not just the Gulf, Lebanon, Jordan. I expect we'll start seeing things pop off in other countries by the end of the week.
Yeah. Well, you had a guy
They,
in Austin on
I saw
Saturday
that.
night that
I saw
potentially
that.
was motivated to shoot up people at a bar.
And that's not going to be the last time something like that happens.
Unfortunately, no.
I would be shocked. It it's going to bring a lot of pressure to bear, and I know we want to talk about this specifically in terms of energy infrastructure And in terms of defense expenditure as well, can we just talk about interceptors for 5 seconds?
Yeah, jump into it.
As I'm sure you've been aware, if you've been following the news, some of our listenership is in countries that have been directly affected by this. The Iranian government has sent ballistic missiles and drones. They've attacked hotels. They've attacked naval bases, the Fifth Fleet. They've attacked airports, especially. They're now attacking power plants, I believe. There was a refinery that was hit today in Saudi,
And
uh,
Doha as well, and Qatar as well.
and Qatar as well. I would say they're targeting critical infrastructure, mostly with drones. And there was an initial cascade of missiles. I do believe there's still missiles incoming. But most of the buildings that are getting hit with drones, and these are cheap. These are mostly Shahed 136s, which are about $35,000 to $50,000 to make. Very light. I mean, they're not big. They don't tend to have a huge warhead. I think it's like 150 pounds, but they can cause quite an impact and a lot of destruction. And they've been used very heavily in the Russo-Ukrainian conflict by Russia. They also have a pretty incredible range. They can travel extremely long distances to their target. And because they're so small and they can fly low, they're very hard to find. So, in order to intercept the missiles and the drones, and they have been coming in waves, the Gulf states initially had to rely on mostly their Patriot missile interceptors. Patriot missile system is a U.S. missile system that has been exported to a lot of our close allies, mid-range, very top of the line, very effective now, didn't start off that way. Also very expensive. So I believe the starter price for a battery of them, which is several interceptors, I think it's three or four, is about $4 billion.
Jeez.
Each missile is $4 million each. If you're using Patriot missiles, each Patriot missile is $4 million. And usually, particularly if you're a little nervous about a missile coming in, you're going to be using multiple interceptors for each target. So in the initial couple of waves, we're aware that the Gulf states were mostly using Patriot systems to shoot these things down. Now, I think in the UAE, in the first couple of days, we're talking, I think, 150 missiles, maybe 200 and something drones. So they ate up a lot of money and a lot of material doing this. One country has actually stopped using missile interceptors. Qatar has switched to their Air Force, which is also expensive, but they were using too many missiles. Again, cost differential. The Iranian missiles are expensive. The drones, which they're using overwhelmingly more of, are not. The drones are very cheap. The interceptors are not. In the last 48 hours, I would say between Kuwait and the UAE, they've probably spent the equivalent of $4 to $6 billion shooting these things down. It's a lot of money.
That is. And then got to peel that back a little bit. Where do they get that money? Oil and
Yes.
energy.
Yes.
And one of the biggest crises that could happen is you have the Strait of Hormuz. It's a very, very small gap between the UAE and Iran that gets potentially closed off. And you had a ship, was it yesterday? An Omani ship, and I think a Palawan flagged ship as well that were attacked
Yeah.
in the Strait of Hormuz.
And more ships today.
And more ships. Wow.
and more ships today. There was a ship that was struck in port in Bahrain, and there was a ship, I believe, that's on fire off the coast of Oman. Um, and they keep hitting ships. Officially, I believe about I think his name's Abbas Araghchi. I don't want to get it wrong. Foreign Minister of Iran had an interview in which he said, "Of course we haven't closed the strait. We're not crazy. We'd never do something like that." And then said, "But to be fair, we don't control what the we don't control the Revolutionary Guard," which is just kind of an amazing statement.
Yeah.
We don't control those guys. So, whatever they're doing,
They're off a leash.
which was literally contingency planning on Khomeini's part, where Khomeini basically said, if the supreme leader is ever taken out, again, the Revolutionary Guard reports directly to the supreme leader. If the supreme leader is taken out, that authority goes to regional generals. So there are 21 separate commands. They're all being run by a general. And those guys are incommunicado. They are not talking to people in Tehran. They're not talking to a lot of people. They're very hard to find on purpose. And they're making their own decisions. So in the field, someone has gone, this is what we're doing now. And again, because of the way this thing is set up, people are going, yes, sir. And this is going to be, again, the sort of rhetorical device of going and saying, well, we're not doing that, but then again, I'm not making any decisions at all, is it's interesting.
Well, yeah, that's to say the least. And
Yeah.
you have 21 generals in their own command that are making 21 different decisions.
Yeah.
Okay, are you going to have anything that's cohesive? No, but it goes down to survival. And it goes down to the survival of whatever's left
The
of
regime.
the regime. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, and it also, again, it forces, I would say specifically the Israelis, because they seem to be doing more of this than we are. It forces the Israelis to play human whack-a-mole. And it's going to make, which by the way, I think Israeli armed forces generally, I want to say enjoy, but they do that a lot. I also think it's going to be extremely expensive, costly, and difficult to do in that environment right now. And again, that's purposeful. They're trying to make this hurt as much as possible for everyone. And to go back to the Strait of Hormuz, that is going to have very real costs very quickly.
Yeah. And I'm going to jump into this really quick here. Okay.
Please.
So some of the countries that are going to be most affected by this are actually not right in the Gulf. You've got Japan, you've got Korea, you've got China, and you've got India. And Japan gets most of their oil from the Middle East, and they're deeply exposed to not having oil from the Strait of Hormuz. If that supply line stops, Japan gets virtually no oil. So what is Japan going to do? Okay, they may try to get some from the U.S., but this is going to heat up if this prolongs over the next few months. I'd even say if it goes longer, countries are going to start exploring in the Spratly Island in Southeast Asia. And you've talked about that before. That's another potential hotbed. That will become a bigger hotbed because these countries need oil. Still, they need oil. Japan started World War II, according to the Japanese, because the U.S. cut off their oil supply. So if the Japanese don't have oil, they're willing to go to great lengths to get that. They may just move down into the Spratly Islands, and take it.
They're not the only ones. The Koreans, the Chinese, there were a lot of people on the hook for this. And I mean, we've been talking about this. Maybe it will force people to be reliant on other sources of energy, but that's in the long term. In the short term, if you're getting 90% of your oil from one country and the tap turns off, you're going to have big problems immediately.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean those strategic reserves, I have no idea how much the Japanese would actually have, but better hope
I
it's a lot because
better hope it's a
it's
lot,
going to
exactly.
this is going to impact too AI development. It's going to impact
Mm.
tech. It's going to impact the U.S.
Oh
relationship
yeah.
with Japan militarily and economically. I mean, this is huge. There are huge knockdown effects that this war is going
Ramifications.
to have. Yes.
Yeah.
And if this
I
lasts 3 weeks to a month, yeah, it'll probably blow over
whew.
pretty soon. But I think that's very much pie in the sky. This is going to last a very long time because, like you were saying, you have 21 generals now that are essentially fighting for control and they're fighting for their lives.
And they
And
are fighting for their lives. And I think the regime is fighting for its life. And I think, again, like I said, that is a posture that these individuals are comfortable with. A lot of them have been preparing for this moment for a very long time, and they're here and they're going for it. Now, that doesn't mean that everything's going to go their way. I don't think it will, but it's a dangerous moment, I
hmm
think.
hmm
Um, Again, the ramifications are difficult to keep track of. What you just mentioned is right on the money, but it's not just oil, it's flight routes,
hmm
it's natural
Logistics.
gas, it's logistics, it's container shipping. Maersk is no longer shipping into the Persian Gulf. This is big. There's just a lot of things where if there's a resolution in a couple of days, which again, I don't see that. If there's a resolution in a couple of days, this is going to have massive shocks because people are going to look at things and go, oh my God, shipping. Oh my God, natural gas. Oh my God, oil. Oh my God, my cheap tickets on Air Arabia. Like,
hmm
people are going to be shocked. If this goes on to 3, 4 weeks, and they run out of all those nice Patriot missiles. Maybe a couple planes get shot down. Someone takes out a desalination plant. Someone takes out an energy producing plant somewhere in the UAE, and the power goes out because we're in March, we're getting up on April. Things are getting hot.
Yeah, literally.
Literally, this becomes a major issue. Again, a lot of these countries were trying to reposition themselves away from being reliant on oil by expanding tourism and financial services and basically the service sector generally.
Yeah,
Well, this this may have just been blown out of the water.
it may have
I
been. And to just add one more point to that really quick, you have Qatar and the UAE, I would say the UAE especially, it's going, yeah, we're trying not to be part of this. We're here
yeah.
on the side. We're sitting on the sidelines. Qatar as well, sitting on the sidelines. And they're both getting attacked. Bahrain got attacked. Kuwait got attacked. Saudi got attacked.
Oman.
Oman got attacked. Everybody's involved with this now. And if
Yeah.
this lasts for a couple of weeks and Iran's regime is completely obliterated and gone, they'll go, okay, it was worth it. But if this lasts 6 months to a year or longer, they're all going to have questions of going, what the hell were we
I
doing?
don't. I actually I disagree with that. I mean, I don't disagree with that, but in terms of the basic premise, but I
hmm
think the timeline I would say is even more constrained. I think if this starts going 3 or 4 weeks, they're going to get there because they're not. These are not countries that are designed for that. And I think what the Iranian strategy is, and who knows if it's effective, but I think the strategy is to force them to take a side.
hmm
You
I'm
either,
with you 100% with that.
yeah, you force them to commit. They either go, okay, Americans out, or they start fighting with the Americans, which honestly would be a huge boost for the Iranian regime. Because this action, I can tell you, is not generally popular amongst the majority of the population in the Gulf. Definitely, there are people who are supportive of this. And there are people who are going to be very supportive of it now that they're under fire from Iran. But there are also going to be people, not a small minority, I might add, who are going to go, why are we involved? How can you back Israel? And who will view that as a massive betrayal. And the more these regimes are forced to work with the Americans, the more those people will become militant. And the more issues these countries are going to have. And I think I'll reiterate again, they're forcing them to pick sides. You can't be neutral when you're under attack in this way. And it's something that, I think Bahrain and Saudi much less so, but Qatar, the UAE, definitely Oman, these are all countries that have, to one degree or another, really straddled the fence. Qatar and the UAE have both had very close relationship with Iran. So has Oman. They've also had very close relationships with the US at various times. They've sort of had it all ways. The UAE recently has had a pretty close relationship with Israel. It's clear that that is not going to be the case going forward. And, it's interesting because I think what it echoes for me is you'll definitely remember this, Dave. At some point, I think either in the lead up or immediately after the invasion of Iraq, the second time, there was that famous pull quote, "You're either with us or against us."
I had a feeling you were going to say that.
You know me well. You're either with us or against us. And that's what the Iranians are doing. They're doing it in the most brutal way possible. They're going, you can't sit on the fence. You can't say, we're going to let you keep a base, but you can only use it for defensive purposes. You can't sit on the fence anymore. You're either with us or you're against us. There's no half measures. And I think how the Gulf states respond is going to be really pivotal in how this conflict plays out going forward.
Yeah, and this does go back to, geez, almost a month and a half now, right? Maybe a little bit more, when Maduro was captured and brought to the U.S. The whole existing world order was gone that night. And this is
Yeah.
just another step down of that existing world order of
Oh my
countries are
God,
going to
yeah.
follow rules, leaders are going to follow rules. There's a way that we try to work things out. That is history. That is completely and utterly gone, where you're going to have to choose a side. And you're going to have to essentially advocate for yourself in this
Yeah.
existing world of geopolitics.
And
It's
I think
deeply, deeply fragile.
it's deeply fragile. And I think what's scary about this is the US and Israel firmly accept that view of the world. So-called international institutions, we don't have to listen to them. We'll go in, we'll put in someone we like. I mean, that's the attitude. I'm not really condensing it very much. The Iranian government agrees with that. They don't want to get taken out, but they agree with that view of the world. And they're forcing the Gulf to essentially move into that world with them. They're going, guess what? Institutions aren't going to save you. Neutrality is not going to save you. All of these fancy words, it's not going to save you. You're in this world with everyone else. And guess what? That's where we all live now.
Yep.
And
Which side of
yeah,
the fence are you on?
which side of the fence are you on? And you may not even be aware that the fence is up, but guess what? It is.
Yeah, yeah, that definitely is. And we're going to be following. We're going to be looking more at what's going on in the Middle East. And we
Yeah.
actually wanted to talk a little bit more about some happenings in East Africa and maybe some spillover over there, but I think this episode's gone long enough. So
Yeah, I
we'll
think
add that.
so.
We'll add that in
We'll
another
add that
future
later.
episode.
Yeah.
And we want to thank you guys very much for listening. And we hope you enjoyed our analysis and enjoyed the show. If you did like it, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and give us any feedback. If you think we're totally out to lunch, if you think we're nuts, then please let us know. And if you think we're right on the money, then we'd love to hear that too.
Hey, before we log off, I just want to say I understand this is a sensitive subject. I know there are people listening who have probably been directly affected by this, and hearts go out.
Mm-hmm.
This is just rough for everyone, I would say, and rough for the Iranian people who, Jesus, those people have been through enough.
Yeah.
So just again, I don't see the resolution coming soon, but gosh, I hope it does.
Yep.
I really do.
I am with you. Hope this ends quickly and peacefully.
On that note, thank you so much for listening. This is On the Fringe.